intuitive viewers, and welcome. I want to welcome back Andre from Astrology Alert. Welcome, Andre. How are you?
Hi everyone, and I'm well, and thank you for having me on. It's been a while.
You are so welcome. I'm so happy to have you. And it's kind of an interesting time of year because, right, we're kind of at the end of the year. We're almost to the beginning of a new year. And just to kind of just begin, do you have any overall impressions about 2024?
I'd say that just alone on it being an election year in this, incredibly tempestuous climate, I don't know how it can be anything other than a, put on your seatbelt and hang on for your life type year. Feels like that. And there are, some pretty big world events that come out of the Ukrainian situation, the Israeli situation that are keeping things extra tense. And for sure in the U.S., it's pretty obvious that the tremendous division there is likely to get enhanced, manifest even more strongly next year. So I would think 24 in that way is going to be challenging. But then the other side of that is, seems like the economy, despite people saying going back 2 years or more that it would tank, it would go in recession, it would stall, hasn't happened. And that's good. And now there are even possible projections around lowered interest rates, which would then help people get into the housing market a little more again. And so there's a reason for optimism there as well, both for the country and if you are more interested, as I think most people in your channel or in mine are more interested in the Democrats winning. I hope. I would
Right.
be, I would be totally shocked if we had GOP, people. So that's cause for optimism, I think.
So I wanted to ask you about this. I got a message. It was about 2 weeks before the attack in Israel happened. So it was about, I guess, about the end of September. And I got a message that the fall and winter were going to be crazy. And so, which is not usually my guide style. They're usually very, optimistic and very, but they said that something was going to lift around March and April. So is there anything that would kind of validate that's going to be happening in astrology during that time? Is anything going to be shifting or changing between now and say March or April?
Yes, I would say so. Well, if you say that the fall and winter are crazy, and you point to, for instance, the Israeli war, which started in October. It was
Okay,
right
yeah.
with the Pluto station. Those stations, people are often looking for eclipses, but the planetary stations are often more revealing. If there's an eclipse there too, it'll add to it, which there was, but without the station, that eclipse, I doubt would have been that.
Mhm.
So, and then it's not too big a reach to think that it may take another 3 months for that to possibly settle down a bit. And then there's the fact that the spring is what I've been saying repeatedly about how you see Biden's chart improving in a measurable way. He's been in a difficult period, and the fall situation made things worse. A lot
Mhm.
of those negative polls are really the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and the divisions that it has stoked up. So,
Mhm.
and whether or not it's that, I don't know. All I know is that the chart really measurably improves in the spring, while the orange, menace chart gets worse. It starts to downtrend, and one of the things that is holding him up as far as popularity starts to drift away from that spot and go into a much more problematic spot that has more to do with health problems than it does with popularity. So yeah, that would be one way to put it. Spring, for sure.
Right.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
and that segues perfectly into what I was going to ask you about. You did a really interesting video about, I mean, all your videos are
Oh,
interesting, but
well,
this one
thank you.
was interesting for now because you did a video and kind of a, I don't know if it was a comparison, but a kind of a take on two people and kind of their health charts. And one was Matthew Perry, and then you did Donald Trump. So
Hmm.
you did them kind of a little video where you did kind of each of their charts, and you kind of talked not the whole chart was about their health, but there were these there's perilous times that were kind of like
Hmm.
these periods of time that were really really significant. And of course, we know that Matthew Perry passed away during a time when his health was really going to be center stage. And then um, when I looked into Trump this last Thursday, when I did the Thursday Night Live and I was looking at him, the one thing that was like a glaring red light was he better be careful because his health is teetering on the brink. Um, he felt like his blood pressure and his hypertension and the constant state of kind of anger and stress that he's putting himself in. I'm like, it's like he's teetering with a stroke or a heart attack or something, because it just felt like you better be careful. You need to be careful. And he won't be, of course, because he's who he is. But can you talk a little bit about those charts and kind of what you were talking about with their health being in this kind of precarious position, and how Matthew Perry kind of succumbed to it, and then where Trump is as well?
Yeah, I couldn't say it better. You said it exactly as it is, that Matthew Perry succumbed to it. Trump has very serious health threats in 2024. Um, they are even more dangerous the older you are, because uh, aspects like that, you experience them at different times in life. Though not exactly like this. This is particularly bad. It's why it leads me to wonder what's up, because it's in two places in the chart where these two planets are ganging up on him that, you know, signal extra danger than even would normally be the case if you put those two anywhere else and make
Right.
that particular aspect, right? And actually, when you point to things like heart, stroke, blood pressure, that's his Leo rising, right? And this isn't the first
Okay.
chart I've seen go down on something heart related during those kinds of aspects. And even if he somehow manages to completely get around the health, which I doubt that
Mhm.
he's not going to have some kind of event. But even if he did, it's a very maladjusted type of planetary pattern, so that things just don't go well. And of course, when health doesn't go well, that's the worst. And then,
Mhm.
of course, we know that. But uh, if you're experiencing it and you're not having a health period or event, then the alignment is very poor. And so that doesn't help him either. But bottom line, 100% that there is cause to worry. Um, there is that, and then there is kind of around the same time, this has been brought up. There's a Jupiter Uranus conjunction happening next year. That happens for everybody. And
Mhm.
that Jupiter Uranus conjunction happens to line up precisely to one of his planets in a health angle. And I remember someone on my channel who was, commenting, said, "Hey, that looks like an aneurysm or a stroke to me." And very good
Oh, wow.
description. Jupiter Uranus to a planet that rules the 12th sign being where you literally go to the hospital. It's not just health, it's serious health. So, yeah, that's a long answer to say what you're intuiting is what the astrology is definitely threatening, without
Right.
question.
And for some reason it just felt more um like in the forefront, because
Hmm.
sometimes I'll look at him and his drama, the drama that's playing out in his health is kind of in the background. And to
Hmm.
me, when I was looking at him, it was like it shifted forward for some reason. So that's really interesting, and it definitely validates that. Um, I wanted to ask you too, you had a really interesting conversation about um, fascism and democracy. and Pluto
Mm-hmm.
and Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wanted to ask you because right now, art reflects our reality, especially in movies. You see that a lot. Yeah, we watched It's a Wonderful Life, and I thought that is a perfect, like, post World War II movie because the message is if we all stick together, there's nothing we can't do, that kind of thing. And then the 1970s, you had kind of you had Watergate, so you had all this paranoia, a lot of paranoid movies, French Connection, Serpico, where you're not trusting authority figures and they're all corrupt, all the president's men. Right now, we have a ton of superhero movies. They can't get off of the superhero movies, and I'm wondering if you know if how the planets kind of they you know our reality is working in alignment with the planets, but
Mm-hmm.
also art I think fits in there somewhere.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
reflecting in there. And so these superhero movies, as much as we love superhero movies, I think they do play into that fascist idea where one person can fix it, or one person's in charge, or a little group of people are in charge and they'll fix everything. Do you think that is the case? And then what does that where does like Pluto and Aquarius kind of fit into this kind of um, uh, pole between, fascism and democracy?
Right. Yeah, it's exactly it. So 100% that art gets reflected. In fact, one good way to put this is if you see the charts of actors, actresses, they will act out their chart. So if the person has a very gangster-like type of chart, like James Gandolfini or sometimes John Travolta, that's from having that particular planet really wired. So then they're given those parts and they
Oh, how
put that in.
interesting.
Oh yeah, you see this a
That's
lot,
fascinating.
including when they're doing a certain movie. It might be really really intense at that point. So then they might tell you about other parts of their life that reflect that transit as well, because it's not just the movie they're making. You get more than
Right.
one thing, but that's totally true.
Yeah.
And then it's not surprising to see the collective energy reflect the very thing you're saying. So the superhero, at least on one level, has a quality of Pluto. Pluto being the planet that is like the ultra. It's meant to be the ultra male, even though you may get female figures that can
Mhm.
be superheroes as well. By and large, it'll be a male like
Yeah.
Superman. That's Pluto. But Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, and this fascistic thing kept building and building. To me, it peaked in the middle, which, again, not surprising. The planet is deep in the sign. That was around when Trump, Bolsonaro, Boris Johnson, Brexit, the height of what just happened. Everyone was
You're
just
right.
shocked, and then it started to go the other way. And we're now actually near the end of the Pluto cycle. And when you think of Pluto and Aquarius, Aquarius being much less government centric, which is what Capricorn connects to. Aquarius has the feel of the group. So then that would be like Ocean's 11, or, when you're getting into, there's a group of people that are doing the thing, the team
Right.
idea rather than the single individual. So from the astrology perspective, this is the dying period for the fascistic thing, right? And there have been a couple of events like Milei in Argentina sort of fits it, but I don't think he's really the greatest. At least we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he doesn't feel all that Putin to me. He feels more like almost like an unruly teenager that got the
Oh,
job, and now we'll see what he does
okay.
with that.
Yeah.
So that's my sense that even though there'll be other problems, because people always think, okay, well, we're getting out of this, that's it, utopia. No, there's no utopia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then
Right.
the complaint is going to be that, for example, Aquarius being a group thing, perfect fit for corporations, for groups of people having too much power, and
Right.
what to do about that. But this particular manifestation of it now is pretty disturbing, because it has that quality. When Pluto was on the other end of this in the 1930s and into the 1940s, that was a major rise in fascism. That Cancer Capricorn axis is almost certainly the worst for Pluto. I'm not going to live long enough to give you, multiple studies of this with Pluto, but
Right.
that's the feel because it was right on the opposite end of it when we went this way, and we've been in it for a while. And Trump is definitely one of those, people that are reflecting that reality. But it's near the end, and as it turns out, the end of this sign for him is not good at all. That's the whole point. It just turned out that way, and goes to this thing that I said in a recent thing where I said people are always saying Trump is so lucky. There are so many things that have happened to Trump that are really unlucky. When you think of COVID, for instance, that's not lucky, especially when you have a fool. If you have a fool for a temperament, you're going to screw that up every time. If
Right.
that happens to Biden, he's the one that has to suffer. Biden comes in to clean it up, and now look what we're in. The economy going well. I mean that's unlucky for Trump. Trump needs
Right.
chaos. He needs things to be bad to say I'm better. Bring me in. So again,
Right.
not a whole lot of
Right.
luck. Anyway, that was a long answer, but
No,
yeah.
I think that's perfect. And I guess the upside of the groups kind of rising up is the thing that we're seeing with like uh all of the unions popping up again.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
things like the things like people, like I just saw that a nurse was suing the corporation, or the I don't know if it was Kaiser, or is it one of the big hospitals, and she just got $41 million. That idea of the little guy kind of um, being able to take on the big guy kind of thing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, it
and
fits. Yeah, that totally
right.
fits.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. Now switching gears just a little bit, because you talked a little bit about in that same video that, which I hope everybody goes to watch, is the one that you did about fascism and democracy, the Pluto and Aquarius one. You talked a little bit about technology, um,
Hmm.
AI, for instance, and I just did my 2024 predictions, and one of the things that they said was that AI was going to be coming center stage again, and that it really is it's a choice for us. It's a choice, like when we had nuclear capability. Do we use it for good, or do we use it, to use for power, or do we use it for a bomb? It's our choice, really, how we use AI, and that it really has wonderful benefits and can make our life easier and that kind of
Hmm.
thing. But it has this other side that's kind of more um, scary, or more, we let it kind of take us over. What do you see as far as the planets? How do you feel like our technology is going to be shifting and changing, and do the planets tell us what we may choose with AI? Will we let it take us over, or will we kind of use it as a tool?
Well, the Pluto and Aquarius almost certainly is connected to AI because one of the ways is that the initial stirrings happened in the spring when Pluto entered Aquarius. And so
Mhm.
that's an automatic correlation to the timing. But Pluto's going to be in Aquarius though until 2042. So we're talking about a long, long period of time when it's doing its work. And
Mhm.
then we have to add to that Uranus is switching signs in 2026 into Gemini. And Uranus in Gemini tends to be very revolutionary for the entire world. I think probably because it was discovered there. And so you go back to the only immediate drawback that I think of, though, it's also when the Civil War was happening. So for the U.S., it's a tricky planet because
Right.
the U.S. is a very independently ruled, so to speak, collective. And so Uranus being the epitome of that, you can get a huge disagreement. But
Mhm.
Uranus and the Industrial Revolution, the growth of technology, Uranus is connected directly to electricity and all the things that electricity can bring. So Uranus going into Gemini is kind of a worldwide revolution of sorts. And Gemini and Aquarius are air signs. So that's one of the places is typically around information technology, the computer world and things like AI. So it's
Right.
even more enhanced because of those two. Now, the one big advantage is that the Uranus and Pluto they come out of a conjunction. If you picture these two planets moving, they were conjoined in the 1960s, which is why the 1960s were so turbulent, because these two really heavy planets, and they were being opposed by Saturn in the middle of the 1960s. It was a difficult period. Really, what was going on is there was a lot of rebellion against the status quo, the
Right.
patriarchy, the whole bit. Now, Uranus and Pluto, what's happened is because Uranus is much faster moving, it's gotten ahead. They're going to make a trine in 2026. That's good. That's suggestive of, even though it's something really advanced and potentially dangerous, it's much better to have that than to have a square. Let's put that in there. If it were a
Right.
square, you'd be thinking, oh, the energy from the 60s could result in something really challenging. So that's one positive thing. But I'm still, holding out for some or quite a bit of discord around the American experiment. I've said this a number of times, that when the planets are where they were, I would be completely, where they were in the Civil War, I would be totally amazed if, the Democrats win the 24 election and the Republicans accept it easily. And I doubt
Right.
it. I doubt it very much, based on the current scenario. It's going to take longer, 2 to 4 years at minimum for the
Right.
US, right? But nevertheless, it's good to see, though, that some of those bigger patterns are not all that catastrophic. They would point more to, smooth growth and integration of new things, which is perfectly fine. I mean, if you showed someone in 1890 that you can turn on a light, the switch and get light everywhere, they would go, wow, that's magic. So
Right.
AI in a way is like that, right? You come up with something that does something similar. I mean, I heard someone describe to me the astrologer that was on. We did that long talk, and he said to me, "There's AI already somewhere where it can look at you and create a fake persona that talks like you, and even the way he put it that I thought was really, really freaky. It can take your, it can uh, have you talking in a different language, translating your message, and it'll even make your lips move in accordance with the language that it's translating to. Okay, that is unbelievable in my opinion if
Wow.
it can do that.
Yeah.
Although you can see how scary that would be, in terms of what you could manipulate and so forth. But you know what always happens, right?
Absolutely.
When societies invent something, uh, what'll happen is, like, remember when, if you think of when they started to copy things, the natural thing is, okay, they're going to copy everything. Well, then you get counterpoints to stop it. And so
Right.
if there are fakes, there'll probably be software to identify them and so forth. So it's not going to be a simple thing to fake your way into the future, so to speak. It'll be hard that way too. So
Right. Well, I think it puts people on edge too, because we have such issues with what's the truth right now, misinformation and and other countries like getting involved, so it does it yeah, it makes you it does make you go to those negative places, but also there's huge positives, particularly in education, I would think, to be
oh
able to
yeah,
learn certain, I mean, it really seems like again, an amazing technology that if we can harness it and use it as a tool, it will be transformative and groundbreaking and really, really positive. But we always have, the people that want to mess around and be ridiculous with it. So
yeah, and in part the astrology there, another totally different cycle, but the Neptune cycle, which goes back to 2011, has seen on the upside the tremendous rise of information. For instance, the whole YouTube experiment, any place where you project a video and put information out, fabulous. I mean, I remember
right.
decades ago, you had to do so much work to get at the information. That's the upside. The downside is the disinformation. So you get,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, whole cloth lying. I mean, even in the political sphere, it's just so remarkable that people can follow individuals who are lying. It's almost like they're saying, well, lying is part of life, so we should all just become better liars. No, that's actually really bad. When a
Yeah.
society tolerates, lying and hypocrisy on this level, where politicians, they tell you something on Monday and they change their mind on Saturday and pretend they didn't say it, of the
Yeah,
same
it's a
message.
very, I mean, and I think that, I mean, I hate to blame everything on Trump, but I think he just opened that door of like this is all acceptable because he's so comfortable with it, and he's so convinced that, oh, just, well, I do it so everybody does it. He has that weird
Yeah.
view of things that if I don't know it, nobody knows it. If I do it, everybody does it. If I think it's okay, everybody thinks it's, and it's
Mhm.
just not. And I think that's one reason he really does not like people like Obama. He really does not like people like Joe Biden, because they are just kind of normal, good people. They're not corrupt people. And I think that really
I know.
throws him, and his view of,
Yeah.
particularly politicians, that I think that's why he's so obsessed with Obama, because Obama's just, he is a nice guy. He is a, he's a good family, he's a good dad, and he's a good
Yeah.
husband, and yet he has this stellar career, and it's so uh, it does not fit into Trump's idea of that you have to lie and cheat to get ahead. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, when you're abnormally bad, anything that is normally good will drive you crazy for one thing. And I mean,
Yeah,
Obama is not just that he's good. He's also, I mean, Trump is lucky he's not running against Obama. He'd be
right.
toast. He'd have no chance at all because Obama continues to be at the height of his communication powers. That's deadly. That's what's holding Biden back. Biden is, in my opinion, totally lucid. It's just that his communication skill has dropped because he's
Right.
older. It's just the way it turned out for him because it hasn't affected Bernie, for example, in the same way, or even Nancy Pelosi. They're
Yeah.
roughly where they were. Biden has lost a step around putting the message out, but that doesn't mean he's in the back and he's having cognitive problems. He's
Right.
dealing with everything perfectly well. But if you
Right.
are running, that's why, by the way, Trump never ran against Obama. Trump knew there's no way. He could have done it in 2012. There's no way in a million years,
Yeah.
in any universe, he can take out Obama. It's way, way too hard. So yeah, I mean, 100%. And in a way, you could say yes, he's responsible. There's also that argument that he was tapping into a rising current that then you can say things like, well, Obama caused it by, making all the white supremacists and anyone that had any kind of racist leaning become more angry and so forth. But then you would almost say, yeah, but the planets are where they are. So there would have been something that would have happened to create this division, the public being split, much like it was back in the 1860s. They were arguing about two really divergent views of the world because Lincoln was saying, well, we're not supposed to be enslaving people. And the South was saying, well, that's our business. That's how we make money.
Right.
And you
Hmm.
shouldn't tell us what to do. I'm glad they lost, I really am. And because it's preposterous, to think that they were trying to build an empire going into Central America, from what I read. I mean, they weren't just thinking, here, it's like, let's take it everywhere. It's a good thing, that it didn't succeed. So hopefully, and I don't think I'm saying hopefully, I'm like 99% certain this fascistic thing doesn't succeed, and that what I'm praying for is that truth will become more of a value. And if not, like I've said it other times, and you may have said it too, it's expensive because we are in a capitalist society. If you lie and you lie too much, it may cost you a lot of money. Ask Fox News,
Absolutely.
ask Giuliani. Giuliani
Hmm.
seems to be determined, to die, drunk and penniless, the way he's behaving. But that's how it works,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, talk about it. Yeah, it's so funny. It's very interesting. I remember this was back in, I think it was like 2017, when Giuliani was in the, he was acting as Trump's whatever lawyer, lackey, whatever, running around Ukraine. And I got it was almost like a dream as I was waking up. It was kind of, how you kind of have those little dreams right before you wake up sometimes. It was one of those. And it was, I don't know if you remember that show Behind the Music. It was on VH1, and they'd have like, but basically falls from grace, basically. But
False
they're
from
always
grace.
about
Right, right, right.
musicians and kind of a fall from grace. And I saw a Behind the Music, and it was Giuliani, and it was like, he used to be America's mayor. He's fallen so far. Da, da. And I woke up and I was like, what was that? And then it was like he died with nothing, a horrible, reputation ruined, everything. And I'm like, what was that? So I went on and talked about it on my channel. Um, but even then I was just like, that couldn't, because he has such a place in because of 9/11 and stuff. How would that ever happen that he would fall that far? But here we are.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
yet
No,
he's managed to do it.
he's managed to do it. And I mean, the thing is that it's so hard sometimes when you're even if you're an astrologer or whatever, you have this sense, but you're kind of going, well, because remember back in 2020, even then, I remember that I'm looking at 21, 22, I'm thinking, wow, that's a lot of Saturn there, Rudy. This may not work out so well, but I didn't think it would be as bad as it's gotten. Where
Right.
now, I mean, he's literally being charged in different places. He could lose all his money. He might even end up in prison because he's broken the law. And I'm sure Jack Smith now, he's doing the opposite of what Merrick Garland was doing. He's going from the top down instead of starting at the bottom and moving up. He wants to go for the big fish. Then I guarantee you he's going to be knocking on the door. MTG, Matt Gaetz, these people that were part of the insurrection, they were seeking pardons. I mean, if I'm a prosecutor, I'm thinking, why is this person looking for a pardon?
Why?
So I'm looking around to ask questions, and if I can, take you into court, I will. And Giuliani, I mean, he's everywhere. This guy has been breaking the law right and left for years and years. So I think your precognitive dream is dead on, in my
It was
opinion.
weird, right? And even still, I'm like, I can't believe like how, but that also makes me think that there was something about the way things were going to go and his tendencies that my guides
Yes.
knew that maybe we didn't fully understand or realize because we don't know these people really, but there was this tendency, this self-destructive, right? He and Trump both, they had this self-destructive tendency that is just
Hmm.
bizarre. And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, have you ever done a chart on Giuliani?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No. Giuliani, there's a time out there, and it looks right to me because, well, even without a precise birth time, he's got a lot of Leo planets. Regardless, that's that
Mhm.
swagger. Leo, when it turns arrogant, which is the dark side of Leo.
Right.
That's Trump's thing too. Leo rising. But then Giuliani, Virgo rising, which he looks way more like a Virgo on the ascendant than if he
Mhm.
had also Leo rising. So certainly, and the thing is with Giuliani, when he was sane, I guess he hadn't had enough liquor yet or whatever, go back enough. And if you see him doing his shtick, even when he was a famous mayor and it was apparently a good influence, because he did clean up the crime in New York, etc. But he got that job by race baiting. He was already doing the exact same thing he's doing now, very
Yes.
divisive, very ugly kind of politics. And who do you think was in the middle of that whole thing with the opiates? He was defending the Sacklers. It's
Mhm.
always these crooks, these thieves, these awful people that are helping the other awful people, right? It's like a
Right.
magnet.
Right.
There he was doing all that, and then I mean, it took society another, I think, 15 years to finally catch up to the Sacklers and their malfeasance. But Giuliani was in the middle of that, and I think it's where he made a lot of his money as well, which
Right.
now he may end up losing. But yeah, I mean, his chart, the main thing is all that Leo energy, you could see it coming because once the election ended, Saturn went into Aquarius. Saturn opposes Leo, and Saturn is famous for just calling you on what you did. It's not complicated. It just says, hey, you were committing crimes, and that's the problem. And it turns out in Giuliani's chart, all the Leo planets are in the prison house, which doesn't always mean you'll go to prison, but that
Right.
you're going to be pushed back or sequestered or, uh, you know, basically attacked, held back. That's definitely true. And they're also the 12th is both prison and it's the idea of a health breakdown. So he's another image. He's another person that's teetering, as far as I'm concerned. He might end up with something, that happens to him as
Right.
well. It's not just Trump. Giuliani. It's a little more graphic for Trump right now, but Giuliani's is definitely risky as well. So yeah, long story short, his chart reflects it for sure.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then the last kind of person I wanted to talk to you about is Hunter Biden because
Mm.
um everybody's talking about Hunter Biden. The right, are just they've made him into such a villain, and um I feel sorry. I feel like he's of the Bidens, he's probably the most uh I don't know. I feel like he's always felt a little second to his brother. And I always felt like he kind of he made a lot of errors and a lot of mistakes trying to be noticed in his family, because his family there's with Bo, when Bo was still alive, he was like this the soldier and the apple of his father's eye, and then Joe Biden's this senator, and so I always felt like he was always trying to keep up in some way. And I know that he's done things that weren't great because he was in that position, but I in this Thursday Night Live, they asked me to look at him, and the only thing that I saw, which happened this week, was that he'd be talking publicly, that he would come out and say something publicly. The other thing I felt was that he was okay with whatever the court hands down for him, or whatever it ends up being, that they say you did this wrong, you have to go to jail, or you did this wrong and you have to pay a fine, that he was kind of in a state of surrender about it. It was kind of like I'm ready to accept my fate kind of thing. So there was these two things where it's like he was going to stick up for himself, but also very in an acceptance of mode as well. Have you done any looking at Hunter Biden? And if you have, what did you see?
Yeah, I just talked about Hunter Biden with someone. It's a very topic. Yeah, no, Hunter Biden. I would be amazed, beyond amazed, if he did any jail time. I think this is either a total nothing burger, or he'll get, I don't know, community service, or like a statement. No big deal. The reason being, his chart shows he's been through it, but 2024 is really good. There's no problem at
Oh,
all.
really?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, if you're an astrologer lawyer and you're trying to go after this guy, I would say don't bother. It's not going to work. He's going to find a way out. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
my feeling is this is another. I think the current GOP is filled with really incompetent people who can't seem to. They can't project properly. Look what they're doing with this impeachment thing. They're looking at a situation where there's no evidence. What they're doing is they're exposing themselves to the Democrats, who are very good communicators, pushing
Mhm.
back and starting to say, "Hey, oh, okay, let's talk about that, and let's look what we just did." And so you end up with the message in reverse. You won't even have any talking points to present to your people. So it's just completely
Okay.
nuts. And Hunter Biden, the one thing about Hunter Biden that's interesting is that he actually, if you look at his chart, I'm pretty sure that he got into his main addiction, wasn't it cocaine? From what I hear, he got into cocaine. I'm pretty
I
sure.
think that's right. Yeah.
Because you see in the chart what it is probably what you said, directly or indirectly, a lot of ambition to be something. And coke is the classic, uh, where I say if you contrast it with opiates or things like marijuana, which tend to, put you in passive mode, kind of looking
Right.
around and doing nothing. Coke is the one that, like even athletes
Oh,
are drawn to coke
that's
because
right. That's right.
your confidence rises. The problem is that it's like coke is like really any drug, but coke probably one of the worst is that's like getting a really amazing racehorse, and the person who sells it to you should say you should be aware that this thing is going to knock you out. I don't, you're going to fall down and you're going to really be bruised, right? So he probably just
Yeah.
lost control, and then he probably started using, which also happens with drugs, is if you take an upper, then you need a downer, then, pretty soon
Yep.
you've lost control of everything. But I don't think this guy is anywhere near as stupid as people are painting him out to be. He's not
I
stupid at
agree.
all, in my opinion.
I agree.
And he's proving, I mean, to me, he said, I'll testify in public. I mean, how much
Yeah.
more of a signal can you get than that? And then the counter signal, the GOP say, no, we don't want that. Well, that's pretty interesting. Why not? What's the problem?
Exactly.
You're actually worried that he's going to make a case right in front of your face. You want to do it in the background. Anyways, as I said, long story short, if I have his chart, I'm relaxed about my 2024, and I would even say to his lawyers, get this done as soon as possible. Get in there, don't delay, do the opposite
Right.
of Trump. Get into court in the spring, get in there and you'll see. You'll be totally fine. Or the summer too, it's totally fine. 25 still good, but it's just particularly good now. And from the summer of 24 for a full year, it's particularly good. So, yeah.
That's good news.
Hmm.
And yeah, these Republican, I kind of feel like how it was when they overturned Roe. I feel like it's the dog that caught the car, and I think the same thing with the um, this whole impeachment thing. I think it's the same thing. They're going to be called on their garbage, and they're going to have to, put up or shut up. And there isn't anything to put up. So what are they going to do? Like you said,
Yeah,
it just exposes the facade, and they'd be better off just saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, when actually doing it, it's because there's nothing there.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, the only thing here is that I just so often wish that Democrats were as aggressive as they are. And so this is a great time. Go all in on saying they've got nothing and they're going to put you through this thing and they're going to drop it just like they drop Benghazi. These are people that are not interested in presenting anything truthful. It's all, make a message to make Biden look bad, but they got nothing, total nothing there.
Absolutely. And I also think, don't we have people that can look into their stuff, their money, I feel like go on the offensive. Why are you always on the defensive? Because it's like these people, I mean, Matt Gates alone, there's a treasure trove of whatever in his closet. It's like, find it and, go on the offensive a little bit because like you said, even people asking for pardons. Why? What did they do? Let's find out. Let's go look.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
and which, by the way, is another. This is the thing you said earlier. I don't know, maybe you didn't say this, but about how Trump, like, why is he running? Or it's clearly to try to make the stuff go away, all the legal
Mhm.
problems. But I mean, if the presidency goes the other way, just think about what 25, 26, and beyond hold for him and all these other people,
Mhm.
because then it's almost like carte blanche to pursue all the malfeasance, which should be pursued. I mean, that's the whole point. If you break the law, then the law should deal with you. You shouldn't just say, "Oh, well, he's a congressperson." No, I mean, especially if they're a congressperson.
Right.
Like I don't think, for instance, again, everybody's innocent until proven guilty, but I thought that Menendez thing, that guy. I mean, he looks pretty guilty. He's a Democrat, but I'm sorry,
Right.
buddy. If you've got
Right.
gold bars and hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, I mean, what
Yeah,
can
it
that
doesn't look
be?
good.
No, it looks awful, and I mean, I don't want to convict you before you're truly convicted, but to me, it looks awful, and that has to be dealt with. Otherwise, society corrodes. It becomes dysfunctional. If you don't
And
deal with it.
I think Democrats largely are okay with that, because you don't see them circling him like they've
Yeah,
circled Donald Trump or anybody else's. We really do let them kind of like, oh, you made a mistake, well then I guess you better pay for it. I guess you better, even like Hunter Biden. If there's something there, there's something there. What are you going to do? But it's just not that way with Republicans because I think they want it to be kind of a lawless uh, they want to just be able to do whatever they want to do, and that's the point, right?
yeah. The thing that what would really be amazing, and I don't know if you see this. Maybe sometime do some kind of dive into this, because I think
Yeah.
the source of all this began in the Reagan years when they took away, there were restrictions that prevented outlets like OAN, Fox, Newsmax. They couldn't just, spout BS the way they do. All of a sudden, it became okay to just lie, because if you think about it, what's happening now, if the media environment, you can criticize the mainstream media all you like, they're mostly attempting to tell you the truth of a situation. And the other group, they won't even show something if it's not to their benefit. So, for instance, this new guy, this Mike Johnson, uh, ultra Christian, pretend whatever. I don't know what he's doing, but anyway,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
he is on camera, looking at the camera, saying how we shouldn't just impeach Donald Trump, blah blah blah. Now, and for much less, now they're trying to impeach Biden. That's just utter hypocrisy. When the message is completely opposite. And it used to be that if you were on camera saying something is black, you wouldn't then show up later and say, no, really, it's white. People would laugh at you. Remember John Kerry? They were saying, oh, he's a flip flopper. He's a
Yes,
flip flopper.
yes.
Holy Lord, flip flopping now is flip flopping is like it's like in vogue. Everybody flip flops on everything,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's not good. That's not a good thing,
Right.
because it turns into a corrupt society. So it would be great if the media had more restrictions that way, and you couldn't just make up stuff whole cloth. And that was actually a law that was in place and was removed. And
Right.
But what's interesting is that this is another, we're always looking at all these cycles and trying to figure out, okay, well, where's this going? And there's this other totally separate way of looking at economic cycles that seems to cut across in 40-year blocks, which is interesting because there's a 40-year block between Roosevelt and Reagan, and now we're at the other 40-year block of that, which in a way in astrology, you're talking about two Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, so there might be something like that. The point being, though, that there are people in the economic community that are saying that now it's changing for these next 40 years. We're in the same block as we were from 1930 to 1980, so that, or 1940 to 1980, so that there is more better wealth distribution rather than having it all pool at the top, and potentially better controls, so that you don't do things that what they're doing basically by allowing, lies and manipulation. I think that's part of the reason you end up with fascists and or even oligarchs or people that have too much money. It gets too unbalanced, right? Because you allow anything goes. If you had to stop and think, maybe I shouldn't say this, you probably wouldn't. So that's one of my prayers. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're talking about the fairness doctrine. That's what it is.
Yes. Okay. There.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and you're right. That a lot changed after that. And and it's hard to once you get rid of things like that, it's really hard to reinstate them, because there can be that, well, we want to be free and we want, we want free speech and blah blah blah. So now that they've undone that, it would be really hard, I think, to go back. But I agree, there has to be, I think one of the things that may come out of all of this, the gag orders and stuff like that, is a conversation about free speech. And is there speech that should not be protected because it's trying to do harm? Yelling, fire in a crowded theater, that there are certain things that, but it does make us, I think it's going to make us revisit, all of this, because it's been such a disaster.
Yeah. I realize that it's tough in the sense that every group advocates for themselves. It's curious that, for instance, who set up a lot of these rules? Lawyers. And lawyers, one of the things they did, it's really curious, because they're a service, that isn't taxed, but other things get taxed. They literally set up the law, to reflect that. But think about, for instance, with lawyers, how I'm amazed that there isn't a rule that prevents, a slime ball like Giuliani. What is he doing? He's in court. He says, "Oh no, Your Honor, there was no fraud." Then he's outside the court saying the opposite. And why isn't there a law that says when you're a lawyer, you must tell the truth. You must always, if you make public statements, you should be the same statements that when you're in court. You can't, lie, like say the opposite thing. That shouldn't be allowed because you're a representative of the law. To me, I know that's a restriction. The problem is that lawyers are the ones that would pass that law, and they're not going to want to pass that law. So, but to me, like that brings order to society, because you can trust, that something is real rather than what he was doing. But even now, the judge just admonished him by saying, how can you be outside the court? Again, saying that, no, what he said about Seamus and Lady Ruby is correct. Well, you already admitted that it wasn't, and you're already going to pay for it. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? How does this even happen? Because there are not strong enough laws to prevent it, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that, to me, I know you're taking away a privilege, but it's a little bit like saying, for instance, to give you an example, it's a totally different field, but how in the U.S., if you are so crazy that you murder 10 people, you're going to get 10 life sentences, right? Well, right. There are countries, Canada, you get 1 life sentence for all 10. I think that's too low. I think you have to increase the penalty, because I know of a horrible criminal in Canada that was let out. He was put in jail in 1992 and he was let out, and I thought, that guy should not be on the street. I remember that case. That is not good for society to have someone like that around. They might do it again, but human nature is so much that it's so, stubborn that way until he does something really bad. You need a crisis, for people to realize, okay, we need to implement this. But to me, they're not taking away freedoms. They're just common sense, to maintain order. Anyway, that's a long story.
No, yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree completely. And I'm so glad that we could fix all the world's problems in just an hour, right?
Yeah, I know. If
If
only.
only we could.
Yeah, if
We
only.
have it all figured out.
I know. It's so. I mean, because this is the thing that we can point out. Oh well, Democrats are better and so forth. But for instance, where they give away their own, thing, they're not going to advocate to, for instance, pass rules that prevent them from doing insider trading. And apparently, it's pretty well known that all of them across the board,
Right, right.
they're always doing this, and that's not cool. Because you're taking
Mhm.
advantage, you're passing legislation, and then you're buying stock, but you don't see them, clamoring to change the
Right.
rules. So yeah,
Well, and that's the problem with having one side right now that's so extreme. It really is like they do have the complete spotlight, and they want the spotlight as well for whatever reason. That they're everything's on them, and you're right. So these other things, it's like, oh well, we'll get to that at some point, or it doesn't seem so bad because this is happening, and there is truth to that, right? We can't be a fascist. We've got to get democracy in order here, first before we do
true.
anything else. But that's the problem with it, right? Is that we can't do anything else until we deal with the crisis. The house is on fire. We can't buy new furniture right now.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Very, very true. I mean, right now it's all hands on deck to take care of the 24 election. And by the way, I think we might be giving people the impression that, it's a high wire act. I think, though, that having said all that, it's really important to focus on realizing that we have the better team, stay relaxed, stay focused, and make sure you vote and encourage other people to vote. And let the chips fall where they may. We outnumber them, and we have a much, much better platform than they do. Their platform is severely compromised going into
Yes.
2024. Take advantage of that and have faith in the outcome. And I know it could be, it's going to be, a little too exciting, but
Right. We're
what can
excited
I
till we
say?
won't, but yeah.
Yeah,
Well, good. Well, thank you so much, Andre. It's
no,
always so fun to talk to you. I could talk to you all day, but I know we only
pleasure.
have a little bit of time here. But thank you so much for coming on, and have a happy holiday too.
You too, and thank you for having me on. That was fun.
Thank you. Thanks, Intuitive viewers. We'll see you again.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.